She drove herself allegedly for about a mile after this incident to a nearby business where she was found by paramedics. That was according to the Chicago Fire Department in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. Already starting to chip away a little bit at DHS's version of events. But do you notice too in that statement that the Department of Homeland Security referred over and over again, including in the headline of the press release, to the fact that Martinez was armed? You can scroll through this whole thing. It is publicly available. And there is not a single reference made to her having a gun.
You want to see what real independent journalism funded by the people for the people looks like?
You ever heard a story like this in America?
You're looking at it.
Congratulations for always being somewhere where mainstream media is not.
Flint, Michigan.
See you in Nevada.
Thanks to people like you, we can get the truth. Corporate media, they've been lying to us for years, and you're going straight to the people.
You are the man. I'm glad you're here.
Status Coup. Status Coup.
For as low as 16 cents a day, you'll keep us on the ground, covering the important stories the corporate media covers up.
JT Siskowski for Status Coup. I've been on the ground in Chicago reporting on the ICE raids and the Department of Homeland Security's operations in that city as it occupies the Chicagoland area.
Brandon Johnson has said, and Chicago police have said, that the police will not be cooperating with ICE on any of their operations, and yet we see them down here helping hold the line, helping protect Immigration and Customs Enforcement as they process this scene here where, again, there was a shooting. At least one person was shot by federal authorities.
Most recently, we saw the Department of Homeland Security's agents shot a second person in Chicago over the weekend, and their story of events as to what happened leading up to and in the immediate aftermath of that shooting is already starting to unwind. Border Patrol agents shot Maggie Martinez on Kedzie Avenue in the Brighton Park neighborhood of Chicago on Saturday. She is the second person that the Department of Homeland Security has shot in Chicago since it started Operation Midway Blitz. Back on September 12th, an ICE agent shot and killed Silverio Gonzalez in the Franklin Park neighborhood of Chicago. This is Department of Homeland Security officers acting as judge, jury, and executioner in one case and attempted executioner in another. The Department of Homeland Security oversees both Customs and Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. And in the immediate aftermath of shooting Martinez, the Department of Homeland Security came out with quite the story as to what happened. And surprise, surprise, a lot of those details are already turning out not to be true, or at least not as exaggerated as the Department of Homeland Security led us to believe, which is something that I emphasized repeatedly during Status Coup's on-the-ground reporting, giving you all of the information that we had from DHS. I reiterated over and over and over again to take the DHS's words with a huge grain of salt, because they have a political agenda here. So this was the Department of Homeland Security's initial press release on the shooting of Martinez. Headline was, "Vehicles again used as weapon in attack against DHS law enforcement. Officers forced to fire weapon on armed woman in Chicago." This morning, Border Patrol agents were conducting a routine patrol near the intersection of 39th Place and South Kedzie Avenue when they were attacked and rammed by vehicles and boxed in by 10 cars. The officers exited their trapped vehicle when a suspect tried to run them over, forcing the officers to fire defensively. This is an evolving situation. FBI is on scene. Quoting now from the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Tricia McLaughlin, she said that while conducting routine patrolling in the greater Broadview area near the same area of Chicago that law enforcement was assaulted yesterday, meaning Friday, our brave law enforcement officers were rammed by vehicles and boxed in by 10 cars this morning. Agents were unable to move their vehicle and exited the car. One of the drivers who rammed the law enforcement vehicle was armed with a semi-automatic weapon. Law enforcement was forced to deploy their weapons and fired defensive shots at an armed U.S. citizen who drove herself to the hospital to get care for wounds. Now, that is quite the story, and as it turns out, some of that already immediately not true. For instance, Martinez did not get shot multiple times and then miraculously able to drive herself to the hospital. She drove herself allegedly for about a mile after this incident to a nearby business where she was found by paramedics. That was according to the Chicago Fire Department in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. Already starting to chip away a little bit at DHS's version of events. But do you notice too in that statement that the Department of Homeland Security referred over and over again, including in the headline of the press release, to the fact that Martinez was armed? There's been some reporting by local media that Martinez did have concealed carry, which might explain if Border Patrol were able to find a gun after the fact, why she had one. But when it actually came time for the federal government to show its evidence against her and charge her with crimes, there was not a weapons offense anywhere in the charging document. I'm looking right now at the 8-page criminal complaint that was filed against Martinez as well as Anthony Ian Santos Ruiz in federal court. And the charge listed there is for forcibly assaulted, resisted, opposed, impeded, intimidated, and interfered with a person designated in the United States Code as an officer and employee of the United States while they were engaged in their performance of their official duties, and in the commission of such acts used a deadly and dangerous weapon. You might think that that deadly and dangerous weapon would be a reference to the fact that Martinez was armed with a gun. Nope, it is a reference to her car, which the federal government is alleging she crashed into the Border Patrol agent's vehicle. You can scroll through this whole thing. It is publicly available. And there is not a single reference made to her having a gun. That's not to say that she didn't have one, but it could also imply that she had one legally. The federal government could come along and add charges later. But why wait, especially when Trump administration officials had come out immediately in the aftermath of this shooting, while the investigation was still going on the ground, by the way, and started to score political points off of the shooting. So I just want to emphasize, on the one hand, you have the federal government saying, oh, she had a gun, agents were firing defensively, making a big to-do out of this. And on the other, you have the federal government in court not referencing that gun at all. Some of those political points that the Trump administration officials tried to score were like this. Stephen Miller, who is the deputy chief of staff for the Trump White House, said this is domestic terrorism and seditious insurrection. The Trump administration keeps coming back to that domestic terrorism. Then later that same day, he said the issue before us now is very simple and clear. There is a large and growing movement of left-wing terrorism in this country. It is well organized and funded, and it is shielded by far-left Democrat judges, prosecutors, and attorneys general. The only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and terror networks. So just calling the opposition in this country to the incumbent administration terrorists by virtue of existing and resisting the occupation of American cities. So Stephen Miller there is trying to somehow connect the dots between Martinez, a person who just lives in Chicago, and so far as the reporting bears out, has no connection to the establishment, Democrats, or organized left-wing political spheres, and is trying to link her and this shooting directly to the opposition party in America, saying that it is all terrorist and needs to be met with legitimate state power. Well, what is legitimate state power? Could that go as far as sending in troops, prosecutions? It starts to get real scary real fast when you follow that line of thinking very far. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said the day of the shooting, "Today in Chicago, members of our brave law enforcement were attacked, rammed, and boxed in by 10 vehicles, including an attacker with a semi-automatic weapon." See, they love to emphasize that gun. "I am deploying more special operations to control the scene. Reinforcements are on their way. If you see a law enforcement officer today, thank them." Kristi Noem had been in Chicago just the day before for a photo op at the Broadview, Illinois ICE detention facility, as well as several other places. Deputy Department of Homeland Security Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said that Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker's Chicago Police Department is leaving the shooting scene and refuses to assist us in securing the area. "There is a growing crowd, and we are deploying special operations to control the scene. This is an evolving situation, and we will give more information as soon as it becomes available." I can tell you from my own personal experience that that is bullshit, because I was there on the ground. Chicago police were there on the scene. They were dealing with with crowd control. There were probably around 100 people gathered around a multi-block scene out there, and there were dozens of Chicago police officers who were holding back the crowd. And the only time that Chicago police ever left the scene in really any discernible sense was when ICE threw tear gas and tear gassed the police right alongside the crowd, making the police officers have to take off running. In fact, the frustration from those in the crowd was that they thought the Chicago Police Department was actively helping ICE, something that their city government had said would not happen. And it's because the federal government isn't acting in good faith and giving out accurate information that I repeatedly warned in the live stream over the weekend of these events and in our recorded coverage to take everything the government says with a grain of salt. They have a political axe to grind here. They have a dog in this fight. They are looking to score political points. The pain and the suffering in Chicago right now seems to be the point. They want people photographing it, getting video of them being cruel, deploying tear gas, creating these scenes by shooting people. That's evidenced by the fact that outside of the Broadview, Illinois ICE detention facility, we also saw Department of Homeland Security officers come out when they did not need to during a recent protest and forcibly arrest and throw to the ground peaceful demonstrators. That was this past Friday. The Department of Homeland Security officers actually have camera crews that are following them around right now. I've seen them with cameras getting video of the Border Patrol agents. They've also got small drones that fly over getting video, and then they put together propaganda reels based on everything that ICE and the other DHS agencies are doing out there.
Hell no.
So it's ICE propaganda.
That's what those cameras are doing?
Earlier, I can't, like, it sounds like the song's saying something like, we're just here to fight or something. Yeah.
Is this supposed to, what is this saying? Look at us be a gang, run around, chase people?
That's the word that comes to mind when you see this is like,
gang. Yeah, like what, I mean, they're literally just, like, how can you justify any of this to be a good thing for the city?
They're putting together propaganda reels based off of all of the operations that the Department of Homeland Security is carrying out in Chicago, trying to feed this red meat in the form of videos that they are posting to Twitter to the Trump political base. Going, see, we're doing something about immigration. Isn't it great how cruel we're being in one of America's largest cities? Just going in, shooting people, arresting people in the middle of the night, profiling people, breaking up families, breaking up communities. And some of these scenes that the Department of Homeland Security is creating by shooting people seem like they are being used as a pretext to then ramp up the operations even more, as we've seen with Trump nationalizing some units of the Illinois and Texas National Guards to deploy in the state of Illinois. But that's why it's so important that we are down there showing you what it's actually like so that you're not just seeing the Trump administration's propaganda. We're the only independent media outlet that has been down there for more than a week, showing you an unvarnished look at what it's like actually on the ground in Chicago. We've gotten interview after interview after interview with all of these people who live in that area who are telling us that ICE makes them feel less safe, that say they don't want the federal government coming in here in the name of safety, destroying their community.
We didn't have uniformed gangs disappearing people in broad daylight downtown with holding guns. We didn't have federal agents literally murdering people as they're resisting being kidnapped. So if anybody brought the war, they brought the war.
Safe to say you feel less safe with ICE in your community?
Oh, 100%. 100%. They're not protecting any of us out here. They're scared of us. That's why they have the guns. That's why they have the tactical vests, because they're scared of us.
So if you can support us, I'm going to be going back down to Chicago in the coming days. Our cameraman, John, is still down there. If you can continue to fund us to keep doing this work, please do so. Go to statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for just $5 a month, 16 cents a day. Helps us afford the hotel room, the gas, everything that we need to actually be there on the ground, getting the truth out about what it's like in Chicago right now under this administration.